Welcome to Local Gods. My name is Marco Liu.
And I'm James Han.
And today we have your Korean dad, aka Nick Cho. Any other titles? Lord, Master?
What?
How would you like to be?
Damn, you said master?
Alpha?
That's
I don't
crazy.
know. Like, how would you introduce yourself?
I'm just me, man. I'm just me. But I'm so happy to be here, and congratulations on the new podcast.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank
And
you so much.
you know, it's always important to get more and more sort of Asian American voices and perspectives out there. And you guys bring your own, and congratulations and thanks.
Appreciate that.
We try, and if y'all don't like it, blame Gilbert Galone from Tiger Belly. But we always like to say that as a joke.
It's
Mark likes to say that. I don't say that. Mark likes to say it.
I know Gilbert like that, though.
but I get it. It's stressful. I think that people who don't put themselves out there in this way tend to not understand. Like you asked me before we went on the air, like about like what do I want to be called? Am I a content creator or whatever? I mean, like people talk about influencers.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I think in the culture, people use the word influencer sort of in a derogatory way. Oh, what is she, like an influencer or something, you know, kind of thing.
Correct. Yeah.
And, you know, if there's one thing that I have found myself doing more and more through my life as I've gotten older, I'm 51 years old now, you know.
Don't look it.
Yeah, I'm working on it, but on the skincare, trying to do sunscreen and everything.
Right.
But is that there are unintended consequences to our choices.
Yeah.
And so when we clown on or make fun of certain things or talk about things in a negative way, there's a cost to that. And so for me, it's like I'm trying to live my life and put myself out there in a way that is adding as much positive impact as possible, but also always keeping another eye on minimizing negative consequences and negative impact, however unintentional and accidental it is. And for me, like that's doing my best to be a Korean American man and dad in 2025.
I mean, that's a great segue for, I think, our first question. Why your Korean dad? Because I'm not Korean, but I've seen from a lot of my Korean friends' reactions, it's like your Korean dad could have a very different meaning to different people. Like your Korean dad or my Korean dad, like it depends on what kind of Korean dad you have, right? So like what's behind that, and what's your take on it?
Yeah, I mean, speaking again from like an Asian American perspective, I mean, first of all, when I say I'm your Korean dad, I've said I'm Korean, and I think everyone who's Asian American understands, you can't ask me what kind of Asian I am anymore. I've already said. So in a way, it was like taking that power back a little bit and putting it out there first and foremost. Because that's a thing, right? Like, what kind of Asian are you is a thing. Like, we see each other in public settings or in private settings or whatever. And it's always like this question, like, what kind of Asian are you? It's very different for many reasons when a non-Asian person, or especially a white person, asks that question versus a fellow Asian person. And if there's a fellow Asian person, it's like, let's compare notes.
Yeah.
You know, whereas when a white person asks that question, then very often it's like, kind of feels like a dressing down. It feels like you're here for to fulfill my curiosity. You know, so tell me about yourself without really having done the background work to build that trust or that relationship to sort of deserve to ask those sorts of questions. And so that all said, I was just putting myself out there, just being myself. I thought about it. I thought, you know, Korean culture is getting really popular. We're talking about 2019, 2020. Like right on pandemic time. Before pandemic time was when I started. My daughters came to me and said, you know, you've been making videos for as long as we've been alive. And actually, the truth is I've been making little videos since I was like 14 years old. You know, in high school, using VHS and all kinds of stuff. A lot of wow and flutter, if you know those kind of terms for the old school folks out there. But that with a little bit of video editing skills and everything, they said, you should make some videos on TikTok. And my first response was like, well, what's TikTok?
Sure.
And so I went on there, checked it out. It's another thing about, again, being like a non-white person, is that whenever we enter a space, one of the first things, if not the first thing we do, is we kind of scope it out and try to establish what's going on here? And what is my position? What do I have, to offer? What do I have, to both gain and lose? It's sort of like a scoping out the situation where, as I've noticed more and more, and you see this a lot, that like white people enter a space, especially white men, and they don't take that step. And that's the big difference, right? It's having the white friend who comes over to the house and doesn't even notice all the shoes next to the door. They didn't even look down there to figure out, am I supposed to take my shoes off here? They just assume that how they navigate the space is how this space is too, even though it's an Asian house. And so thinking about all these things, like, I'm entering the house of TikTok now. What's the vibe here? What's this all about? And so I kind of did a vibe check, like kind of got a sense of what was going on. And then there was no like real calculation. It was like, well, what can I do? Well, I want to offer myself as me. And, I am Korean and I am a dad. I have 2 daughters, Madeline and Penelope. They're now 21 and 19 years old, both in college. One of them's about to graduate. But I always talk about how the last piece of the puzzle was, I'm not a Korean dad. I'm not the Korean dad.
Your dad who's Korean.
I'm your Korean dad.
Oh.
And the thought there was like, when you think about TikTok, and this is again very early, this is before like TikTok really took off, that TikTok is a fairly intimate space. With all the bands and all that sort of stuff, it's like, it's really reminding us of, whereas Instagram feels very like, people put pictures of themselves up there and then you get to look at the picture kind of thing. Whereas TikTok is like, people are really putting themselves out there in a more, what feels like at least a more personal, more sort of authentic way. And so that means something. And that was, I saw the beginnings of that even back in 2019. And so around 2020, I sort of been working on it for a few months, but then I kind of started the Your Korean Dad thing because I realized that I don't need to be the main character. What's more powerful is to make the viewer the main character. And I'm just here for you, And that is very much has a lot to do with my philosophy about parenting. It has a lot to do with my philosophy about leadership. And that these things aren't just positions that you find yourself in one day because you made a baby or because you got promoted in a job, but they're big responsibilities that I would say 95% of people in leadership roles, 95% of people who are parents actually generally do a bad job of those things. And that finding true leadership and the kind of parents that might be worth idealizing in some way are so rare that so that all said, things started blowing up, started getting into the 6 figures of followers, and I was like, what's going on? This is kind of crazy. Like, this isn't really what I signed up for. I was just making content just almost as a self like expression. This would be fun and a way to connect with people. But realizing that I tapped into a certain thing that, again, I was just being me, but that there was a lot of pain out there. People who have strained relationships with their father, their dad, who don't know their dad. There's a whole thing with transracial adoptees, Asian Americans and Korean Americans who are adopted into non-Korean families. And what to have this dude show up on the screen and say, I'm your Korean dad, like that hits different depending on your story. And so for the majority of people, I would say they're like, well, that's weird. You're a Korean dad. I'm not Korean, kind of reaction. And that
first blush.
I was getting a lot of that sort of stuff in the comments, but then I was also getting a lot of people who were leaving comments like, is this what it's like to have like a sweet dad? Like, I've never known my dad, or, my dad died 10 years ago and you remind me of like the good times with him. And it's a thing, like, as much as we talk about gender and gender politics and all that sort of stuff, like, there's so much when it comes to, like, men, masculinity, fatherhood, like, all those sorts of things that for a lot of reasons. Maybe we'll get into some more of those. But for so many reasons that the culture doesn't know how to get into.
Yeah.
And so in the marketplace of ideas, I saw that as a market opportunity. And so here we are.
I mean, you sound way more self-aware, personable, and analytical than any type of impersonal AI. So I'm glad you're a real person. Because you never know. Like a lot of times I'm looking at content, I'm like, is this real? Or?
There could be an AI dad.
Yeah,
I'm sure that'll be a thing.
I'm sure that will be a thing if it isn't already. But that self-awareness, like a lot of Southern California Asians, because we are based out here in LA, they're just around Asians all the time. But was that what you grew up with? Because it sounds like you're used to navigating a lot of spaces where you are not the majority. And so,
oh yeah.
What's your background?
I'm not from California. I'm from outside of Washington, D.C., Northern Virginia.
So many
I'm from
people
Maryland.
like you, yeah.
Yeah. You're from Maryland?
I'm from Maryland.
What part of Maryland?
Montgomery County.
Oh yeah, Montgomery County.
Montgomery County.
Yeah.
See, I have no idea what that
So you're from Nova? You're from Nova?
I'm from Nova. I grew up in McLean, Virginia.
Oh, McLean.
Yeah. Shout out Langley High School, class in 1991.
You're just putting yourself out there. I appreciate that.
I'm old. I'm an old guy.
And you lived there for how long?
For most of my life. I moved out to California in 2010. And
okay.
But it is very different. I mean, I really feel like on so many different levels, I can see and more recently in the last like 5 years, really spent a lot of time reflecting on not just sort of what's brought me to this place, but what things I still needed, in what ways I still needed to grow. And in the last 5 years, I think I've spent the most time, I would call it my self-love era. Like I've been really focused on what self-love means, specifically because, you know, the reason I bring this up is because I realized how much self-hatred I had. A lot of it was, you know, because of parenting and that kind of thing. A lot of it was experiencing a lot of racism as a young person, as a kid, and just being made to feel like disgusting, like gross, like this weird alien, you know? I tell the story all the time that my parents, our families or with other family friends would go to the park and, you know, on the charcoal grill, like grill some kalbi or something like that. And I know this wasn't true, but it sure felt like it at the time, that it seemed like there was another family on that same weekend who was like, you know what? Let's go to the park and yell ching chong at some Asian people, you know, like literally, you know, for what felt like hours. And, you know, my parents at the time in their 30s or 40s just kind of brush it off. And they're immigrants. They're like the immigrants. I'm the immigrant kid. And how those things hit them and how they hit me was very different. You know, for them, they're like, and this is again like a whole thing as Asian Americans, right? For them, they're like, we chose to come here, therefore we chose to endure. We have to sort of endure whatever comes with that, with our choices. For me, I'm like, this is the only home I've ever known.
Yeah.
And I'm being made to feel unwanted or, you know, kind of hated in the only place that I know to live. I didn't choose to come here, you know, kind of thing. And so the ways that kind of affected me and my perspective on stuff, I don't think I would call that a chip on my shoulder situation, but what it has done was, what I've wanted to do is really, first and foremost, like, you know, really leverage that into more sympathy and empathy for other people, the experiences that they're going through, that you don't know what other people are going through. And so, you know, acting under certain assumptions is really doing an injustice to them and to yourself and to humanity, frankly.
Speaking of self-love, is your I noticed your cardigan has is that a patch or
what? This?
Or is that a design, like a smiley?
This is a flex. This is a capital like brand.
Oh, for real?
Japan.
Okay. No, because I mean. Well, I mean, even
what a cool dad.
Yeah, even I mean, I don't know exactly, but like, you know, even I like the mother of pearl accents on your buttons. I don't know if you noticed that.
I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, when you said from Japan, now it makes sense why they have that. I was like, oh, this is some like self-love type of, you know?
Yeah, I mean,
nice.
Even like fashion and taking care of yourself, all that sort of stuff. Like for me, when I talk about self-love in relationships, it's been a big deal. Like I wonder sometimes about the ways that I've been a parent to my kids, and the ways that I've been a leader and an employer, and a mentor to many people who are younger than me over the years, professionally and otherwise. And how much of that love that I gave was a certain type of self-sacrificial giving that came from a place of lacking self-love. Like would I want it any other way than to have been so giving to those people? Like, no, but also acknowledging that there was a cost to that, and that, only in the last few years with my now partner Kimmy, and the journey that we've gone through together, in healing ourselves and through healing each other, doing that at the same time, has been wow. It's something else. If I think that before I really committed to that sort of, call it a quest, I don't think I really knew what loving yourself meant. But it's something that if you're listening to this and it doesn't make total sense to you, or it sounds like that's weird or not important or whatever, then it's something that you need to look into more, because it's really, really important. It'll change your life. I'm looking at you too.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned earlier, people in your comments, they would say a bunch of things. And the thing that stuck out to me was, wow, this is what a kind dad, this is what it feels like to have a kind dad. Like, which one of those comments really make you feel so proud to be doing what you do? Like, what kind of comment, there has to be a type of comment that you see where you're like, I feel like I'm doing a real good work here. I know in general you're really proud of what you do, but is there one comment that you see and you're just like, that's kind of gives you a little more gasoline than some others? Is there something like that?
No.
Oh.
I would say no. I mean...
Or maybe not a comment or something they say in person.
Well, the thing is that what I do and what I strive to do is, in many ways, like what we were just talking about about self-love. Like, is that an affirming thing? Is that like a, pat you on the back and make you feel good kind of thing to say? Like, if you need to look into self-love, if that inspires questions in you or uncertainty, then that's something you need to look into more. That's not a feel-good thing, In a way, it's poking at wounds and asking you and others to challenge yourself further when you're already going through a lot of hard stuff, or that you're already struggling a lot, and I'm asking you to struggle some more in a different way that is going to ultimately lead maybe to healing or something like that. But that's not a feel-good thing. Maybe it's a feel-better thing. Those are very different sort of ideas. And when so much of the feedback that I get is not like, oh, you're so fun and you're so funny, it's more like you touch my heart in certain ways because of the pain I've experienced, or the wound, or the void that I have, that it's a very solemn responsibility that I've sort of gotten into. When I started getting these kind of comments, it wasn't until the fifth or sixth video I was making as your Korean. The first ones were kind of lighthearted and whatever. And then there was one that I did that was to me was nothing. It was let's get some snacks at Walgreens. Do you want the Doritos or do you want the potato chips? Kind of thing. And that was the one that really took off and started getting a lot of comments is this what a nice dad is like? And it felt so heavy because that wasn't what I was expecting. It was more lighthearted. But when the lighthearted gets serious and sometimes dark, then for me it's and as we all should, I think, hopefully, I think too few people do, is I was maybe this is a Pandora's box I don't want to open. Maybe I need to step away from this, actually.
Sure.
Instead of just thinking like, ooh, followers, ooh, views, like, engagement and chasing after that, like realizing like behind all those numbers are individual people, people's lives, people's hearts and, souls and minds. And their health and everything is now we're tied together in some way. Mm-hmm. And so, it took a few days for me to really process, like, is this something that I'm actually ready for, to take this on? And at the end of it, I could say, like, I wanted to make sure that if I said yes, that it was a real yes, not just a sure, why not, or we'll figure it out along the way, as long as I'm on my way to 1 million followers or whatever, like, who cares, kind of thing. It was understanding the responsibility of that. And so yeah, sorry, that's not like the...
No, I think you kind of answered it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think like everything you're touching on, it goes beyond ethnic culture in many ways. Because I think most men and most children in the relationship with their dads are not used to having dad as a therapist. But it seems like there's almost a therapeutic element to what you're doing. And even the story you just described, where the simple act of you asking your kid, your audience, mm-hmm. what they like, and being thoughtful and engaging them in that way it might be triggering for some people. It might be healing for some people. Like, do you have a therapy background? Like, it feels like I can feel the weight from what you're describing.
I'm not a therapist. I have no training along those lines. The only thing that I think is sort of worth mentioning along these lines is that I'm not religious now. I haven't been for a long time. Okay. But when I was 19, 20 years old, I thought I was going to be a church pastor.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
I was, very grew up United Methodist, really, I had my main mentors in my life that were the most important in my life in terms of molding and shaping, not necessarily who I am, but how I think and how I process things and how I lead, were a couple pastors that I had. My youth pastor, Daniel Shin, and like the head pastor of the church, Cho Youngjin Moksanim, Pastor Youngjin Cho, both.
Well, ODPC?
No. Korean United Methodist Church of Greater Washington over there in McLean, Virginia. My parents still do.
Oh, you said Methodist. Oh my God.
Yeah.
You're right. I did a Presbyterian. Oh, my bad.
Yeah. But these folks were, they were people who went to Princeton and Harvard and very like theologians first and foremost. And rather than teaching me what to believe, they taught me how to think, and how to think, including embracing doubt and uncertainty. Mm-hmm. And my youth pastor, Reverend Daniel Shin, used to say, he was like a 1.5 generation guy. He came in his late teens to the States, to Hawaii. And so, there's that certain charming, what I like to think of as charming sort of Asian American sort of immigrant kind of like folksy, but like slightly like the wording of certain English phrases in English is like a thing that like a native English speaker wouldn't say. And so he used to say this thing. He would say like,
let's go to coffee shop, or let's go to coffee shop.
Like,
let's go to
my favorite was going to one of my former brother-in-law's parents had like a little store in Seattle, and next to a light switch that was always on, there was a big sign that said "Don't off."
Nice.
Stuff like that.
Right to the point.
Yeah.
Kind of like it.
But Daniel Shin used to say, one of his like catchphrases, his like things, his equivalent of like, do you smell what the rock is cooking?
Okay.
Was, our job is, on this earth is to creatively disturb each other. And, disturb should it be challenged? No, I like disturb. And creatively, there's no way to change that word too. Like creatively disturb each other. Like, again, a little bit awkward, but straight to the point. And man, if I haven't really lived my life that way, I've gotten in a lot of trouble with folks, and people have been angry at me in different ways, like within certain communities. Because for me, it's like I'm challenging you and challenging all of us. I challenge myself the most. Mm-hmm. But let's challenge each other to be better and treat each other better and treat others better, and do better out there. And you know, that's a radical thing. You know, nowadays, even like more and more you see in the culture, just this hyper consumeristic, hyper capitalistic, like, you know, the people I love the most in this world, you know, some people I'm really close to, when I talk to them about stuff, they're like, hey man, as long as I just take care of my family, that's all that matters. I'm like, that's not all that matters. Like that's how everything falls apart. That's how we gotten in this mess. Is like mine and me and mine is like what's important. You know, I could go on a whole thing about like the problem with America and, you know, at the core of the DNA of this country and through the history, but then also combined with the hope and excitement I have for the potential for America to really be, you know, the place that we all think that it could be, you know, but it starts with how we treat each other. Are we neighbors or are we a consumer base? Like, is that person somebody, a member of my community just like me? Or are they like a nuisance that I need to call the police on? You know, if they make my life a little bit less convenient, you know, this is the pathway to the end of this country and the end of the dream. Everything that America represents can end if we don't figure out how to actually see each other the way that, frankly, most of the rest of the world sees their fellow country person, their fellow neighbor. You know, we need to take care of each other. We all come from backgrounds of people who have a innate understanding of, you know, we only succeed when we take care of each other, you know, and also you know, look after ourselves, like the balance of those two things, you know, kind of thing. But America more and more is like, you know, screw like everyone else. I'm taking care of myself.
I mean, can you go more into detail about, you said like you've made some people even mad through your content. Like, is it like touching onto those like core human values type things where it's like, hey, like what are we really doing here? Or are there other things that kind of gets people going where they're like somehow reacting to the you that you're portraying?
So before a content creator, I was a coffee expert and coffee entrepreneur for 20 years.
Okay.
I ran coffee shops in the Washington, D.C. area, as well as in San Francisco. But that went hand in hand with sort of being like a coffee industry like personality. I had a podcast in 2005.
Wow, early adopter.
I mean,
I didn't even know what podcasts were back then.
Yeah,
05?
Yeah, like an 05.
I'm still playing Pokemon, I think.
See, that's funny because I'm playing Pokemon now.
Full circle.
Yeah, that's right. But the
kind of looks like a Pikachu.
in the coffee industry, I was known by some as sort of a truth teller person, calling stuff out. Before Black Lives Matter and Me Too, like, you know, for some reason on social media in the coffee community, that people would send me like, oh, you know, there's such and such, like, you know, a bad behavior happening in such and such company, like needs to get called out or whatever. Like, you know, I'm like, why are they telling me? It's like, oh, it's because I've put myself out there as being somebody who's not afraid to speak truth to power. You know, and so when you're that kind of person, you inevitably create sort of enemies or people who are unhappy with you. And for me, I always knew like, I'm not interested in like just being a troublemaker. I'm not you know, if you want to be a shit stirrer, it's because you must love the smell of shit, right? You know, kind of thing. But that was never me. Okay. You know, for me, it was because it was because my focus was on the people who didn't have a voice in these situations. And when you're trying to give voice to the voiceless in a certain context, and the people in power, they're predisposed to like, they're like, I don't know who you're talking about. And so what's left is you're just making stuff up. And we see this play out over and over again, right? You're just making this up. You're making up this, you know, like, why do we need DEI? Like, you're making this up. There's no thing, you know, therefore, like, you know, white people are the real victims, you know, kind of narrative. You see this all the time. And so, you know, if people are unwilling to see the truth especially when it comes to other people, then that's really on them. But it still makes me a lightning rod in the moment.
Wow.
And so, yeah, I had the publisher of a coffee industry magazine say that like Nick Cho needs to just go away. Like in the letter from the editor in the first page of the magazine was devoted to telling like their readership that Nick Cho needs to like, you know, disappear into the ether or whatever, because he's not worth the trouble kind of stuff because of the stuff I was doing out there. But, you know, like, I don't know. I never took that stuff in a martyr kind of way or whatever way. Nor did it didn't feel good. But at the same time, like, I didn't let it dissuade me or take me off the path of what I was doing. Because I knew why I was doing it.
So like from Hunter S. Thompson of coffee to your Korean dad.
I don't know about
what a
Hunter
journey.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So, I mean, the act of coffee itself, like it's very, for a lot of people, it's also very therapeutic. And it's also like making coffee for your loved ones and all that. Do you connect the two as well?
When I first opened my cafe, I don't know if anyone else has been through a journey like this, but like the weirdest thing at first was I didn't want to take people's money. Because I'm like, I want to give you something to drink, like something good.
Yeah.
Like to take money felt weird. It's like, I just want to show you, you know, care and consideration or whatever. But when I was preparing to open my first coffee shop in like 2000, I guess it was 2002, I realized that like one day right after I opened, my mom came to visit and I made her a cup of coffee and I like threw out like 4 or 5 espresso shots before I thought one looked good enough to serve her. And then when she left, I thought about it and I realized like, why did I do that for her? Like, why did I do that special for her that I wouldn't do for anyone else? Because she's my mom, but anyone else who walks in the store is somebody's child, somebody's parent, somebody's sibling, somebody's like, is an important person the same way. So, you know, maybe what I'm not going to do is make bad coffee for my mom.
No way.
Maybe what I need to do instead is just make it that good for everybody. You know, and so, you know, I started really pursuing like the craft of it. That's part of kind of what led me to being sort of a industry expert and sort of a personality in that way and connected with a lot of other people. But you know, part of it was I had a head for it. Part of it was being a certain kind of outspoken and very online at the time. Back then, it was like all these bulletin boards before social media, right? It was like all these for the nerds out there, like the PHPBB bulletin boards out there and stuff like, and all these online communities. And but I kept finding that for a lot of other people, they were making good coffee because the coffee made them happy. But for me, it was like, I want to make good coffee to make other people happy. I don't need to be made happy through that process. Like at the time, I didn't even really like coffee very much. You know,
You didn't like the Ethiopian single origin roast?
So the single origin is not a roast. It's origin. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Oh, yeah.
No, actually, like
Fair point.
A fully washed Ethiopian, you know, East African, be it like that's definitely like probably my favorite. Okay. But being focused on what do people want when they want coffee, rather than what do I think is a good cup of coffee for me. You know, a lot of, I think, I mean, so much of who I am today, it was because of the things that I did in coffee. And I was able to do a lot. I created a lot of stuff, gave back to the community in many ways. I created a coffee competition that's been a world championship for the past like 15 years now. You know, it's called the Brewers Cup. It's like a pour over competition. Cool. Like the premier competition for hand brewing coffee is something that actually I like made from scratch.
Oh, I feel like I've heard of that from like, it's like the premier, like you said.
Yeah, there's like the World Barista Championship making espresso. Then there's the Brewers Cup that goes. They're sort of like the other event. And the Brewers Cup was something I created like back in 2010, 2011.
Oh, very cool.
You know, any Blue Bottle coffee you go into, if you look at their little pour over bar, it's like this little, like with this little grate with the scales like built into it and the dripper. Like, so I designed something like that, and then they copied it and then they put it in all their stores. You know, they're like going to a lot of coffee shops. I can see things that I contributed to or had influence in, like all over the place. It's fun to see that legacy, but first and foremost, the most important sort of legacy that was most important to me through my like 20 plus year coffee career was all the current and former coffee professionals that I mentored, that I hired, some that I fired, but that, launching many careers, like there are a bunch of cafes around the country and in other countries that were opened by, former employees and former mentees of mine. And, definitely like that was the best part. Like these are my little siblings out there.
Do you have any favorite coffee shops in LA? Curious now because of your expertise.
I mean, it becomes about the people, I have a bunch of friends who own cafes, so I can't help but like list my friend's cafe.
Which are?
Like, like Yikai, Cognoscenti.
Of course I know Yikai.
Jack from Endorphin. Like these are...
Yeah. Jack I met more recently.
Nice.
Jack I met after moving to LA.
Very cool.
Yeah. It's fun seeing such an obsessive sort of style.
Yeah.
More of a high touch, what I might call like a high touch.
Yes.
Kind of coffee experience. And then, Yikai's been out there, Culver City, for a while. He used to carry our coffee. We spent a lot of time together. But just Southern California is full of so many like Asian American and Black and Latino like cafe owners doing great stuff out here, and it's been great to see. LA was a little bit late to the specialty coffee scene as an area.
I feel like a Philistine now because like growing up here, I felt like wow, LA's on the forefront. But
no, LA was late,
Wow.
but there's advantages to being late. You get to sort of like take your pick from what other people had sort of built up, and then improve on it and then give it a little bit of a SoCal style,
Very cool.
which obviously you see out here.
Yeah. So do you have a favorite, I guess?
No.
Oh, really?
You love all your children.
I love all my friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like whether it's coffee or your content now, so much of what you do is really about building community, even if you're not necessarily getting direct FaceTime with them. And I think the question James and I both had looking at your content is like, when it comes to just being yourself, but also being a very clear representation of Asian masculinity, Korean masculinity, like how do you reflect on that?
There have been a lot of people recently who've all been, how should I put this? There's been this sentiment that's been out there in the zeitgeist, in the culture recently, like men and boys are in trouble.
Yeah.
This sort of idea. And, the expressions of that range from like, boys are falling behind in schools, over here, or university and college sort of admissions, to on the other side, like men are trash and like, kind of thing, like stuff like that. And, through it all, and I think that anyone who is, I hate these kind of catchphrases because of the way that triggers people, but I'll just say like, if you're like a socially justice minded person, like if you're somebody who cares about like things can be better for everyone, and in a way that is equitable, and that it does seek to address, historic sort of like inequalities or like problems and stuff like that, then one of the first things for me that requires, if you have that mindset, is anything that comes up, like where someone is complaining about something, how what they're experiencing, to at least take some time to think about how they might be right, like not rush to how they might be wrong, and I think for men, a lot of people seem really troubled by what they're hearing from like women and other non-men, like in terms of their, like what men have inflicted or done. all that kind of stuff. I think that, I don't even remember what the question was that got me on this tangent. But the point is that I think that there's a lot that needs to be done in terms of imagining what is the future for like everyone, and how men need to rise to the challenge. I've contemplated, like, is this something I want to write a book about? But then something like that just feels so big and so scary to try to take on.
Like trying to define what's masculinity.
Well, but here's how how I might answer that, because like for me, it's when you look at like I said, like you take all this stuff, like you take all the bro stuff and all the red pill, all that kind of stuff over here, right? Like what are they trying to do? They're trying to inspire and get men excited. Like, oh, it's like great to be a man, and here's a great way to be a man, and that feels good and that can make you happy and make you rich and like whatever. Like I get it. That might not be, I don't think that's the answer, but that's an attempt at an answer. And that is absolutely touching on certain truths about people and our desires or our needs that is at least worth considering as part of the solving the puzzle for the larger, maybe a more productive version of it, right? Like that, another way to put that is that's just real. At the same time, like that's not the answer, So like a lot of this is like go to the gym, take creatine,
self-improvement,
like all this stuff. Like I get it. So
it's still good.
It's important.
It's not everything.
But I will put that in the category of like, that's about capability. You want to be a capable man. You want to be able to change a flat tire. You want to be able to, debate this topic, intellectually. You want to be able to even like, grill the hell out of that steak, kind of thing. Like these are all like, about capability. And I feel like men are really stuck on this thing. Like that's what we're for. We're about capability and ability. That's what our purpose is to be capable. But that's not enough. And I would say that the other part that is missing there's two things that are missing. And in fact, you put it's an important one, capability, but I would put two more, I would propose two other sort of legs to this, like table or stool or whatever you want to call it. That is like the foundation of what it means, I think, to be like a man of the future, of like what this time sort of requires, moving forward. And the second one would be like, how about responsibility? Is this just you doing this for yourself and for your own gain? Or does this bring others up too? Does this help other people? Or does it at the least like not hurt other people in the process? That's your responsibility, through it. And I think that that's also a certain type of masculinity that we understand, like, oh yeah, capability, but responsibility too. Like I get that. The part that's in many ways I found it to be the hardest is the third thing. And that's awareness. It's sort of like your eyes and ears through the process. Like if your capability is like your muscles and your responsibility is like what you might call your heart, then the awareness is like your eyes and ears and intuition, like the ability to actually like think things through, to be able to see the impact of what you're doing, see how you're treating other people and what it's doing to them or not doing to them, all that sort of stuff. So like, the awareness, social awareness, self-awareness, like all the different kinds of awarenesses, social awareness, environmental awareness, like all these kind of things, and then you put all those things together and then you realize like, like with awareness, like that's so much of like in relationship, like, TikTok or YouTube, like that's so much of what, women and others are complaining about. It's like, my man is just like unaware. Like he don't give a shit about, this or that or the other thing. It's like, so then how do we maximize capability about our sense of responsibility about our awarenesses? Like, and then if that's masculinity, then wait, is that really masculinity? Because that's just as important for women and other genders too. And then, so then you realize like, oh, that's actually like, those are like the three like foundational sort of cornerstones maybe of what it means to be like a truly good person or a person of excellence, whatever like term you want to throw on it or not throw on it. And that maybe the gender expression is like the flavor of it. You know, it can be the chocolate or the vanilla or the strawberry, you know, kind of thing. It's like, you know, do you want to demonstrate awareness through like, you know, I saw what you did there yesterday in a tender way. Like, you know, I saw you taking care of your little brother, you know, that was really great, you know, kind of thing. Maybe do you want to call that feminine? Is that a masculine thing? Does it matter? Like, am I showing the capability of like, you know, an awareness that like, oh, you know, and I do this a lot at home with my partner. Like, you know, we don't talk about stuff. We're just constantly like taking care of the house around each other. It's like a dance, like all the time. We don't have to have a meeting about it. Things just get done. And it's a certain type of expression of love like between us. You know, is that feminine because I cleaned? Or because I cooked, you know, or is it a masculine thing because there was fire involved, or like, you know, like sharp knives. I got this big like Japanese cleaver like a few weeks ago. Like I'm like, yeah, you know, in the kitchen. Like, does this make me feel more like a man? Like, is that like all these sort, like yes, but also no, you know, all these sorts of things. And you know, on a little bit of a tangent, I feel like that understanding that things can be yes or no, things can be this or that. You know, at the same time, both true, even though they don't necessarily go together. To me, like that is the inability to understand that in many ways is the problem with America. You know, America is very like, either you're right or you're wrong. There's only two answers.
Black or white.
Yeah, everything's like black or white. Like sometimes literally when it comes to race.
Yeah.
And then also like, you know, when it comes to a lot of issues in the politics, like it's very much about black or white. Whereas almost pretty much every other culture, especially Asian cultures, like understanding the paradox and that things that don't seem to both be able to be true actually are true. It's just how it is. And understanding that is part of, it's in the culture, it's in our culture. That's where we come from. And it's something that I feel like a big part of what we have to contribute to the American fabric are these things. So anyway, put it all together. It's like, you know, I been sort of chewing a lot on this kind of like worldview and understanding of like how things fit together and trying to be mindful and, you know, demonstrate my own level of awareness and responsibility, capability to formulate a lot of these thoughts and ideas. Cause I don't feel like people are talking about it. You know, people, and in many ways for us men, it's like, we want the playbook. Just tell me what to do, man. Like, give me a book, give me the pamphlet, give me like 10 TikToks to watch. and if I vibe with it, like I can do that, you know, but in many ways, I feel like a lot of the stuff I'm talking about, I don't know how you guys feel about it. Like, you know, do you agree? Do you disagree?
I really resonate because I feel like most men, as you mentioned, can understand capability because it's skill oriented, and most men, not all men, of course, but most men understand the importance of discipline and working with your hands, building a capacity to understand and master something. Right. But for the longest time, I think I've even talked to James about this. Like when I think about true masculine and manhood, I think about my own dad. I think about the men I respect that were in my life, and the word responsibility always comes to mind because like when I was a kid, my dad working double, triple shifts so that I could go to a summer camp or, you know, have brand new clothes or even toys like that. That was how he showed his love to me and to our family. And I think the awareness aspect, that's something that I'll be honest, like a lot of men, including myself, we don't think about as much. And it just reminded me of how oftentimes I'll see in the comments for your content, a lot of women be like, yes, like, why aren't other men like getting this? And I think they're really commenting on the awareness aspect of it. What do you think, James?
Well, when you were talking, I was thinking about this idea of strength, and strength is in Hollywood or whatever the internet shows to be strength in men. I found over the years that it's not just brute force. it's the ability to harness that brute force into, like harness it and use it if necessary, but barely. But it's knowing that you have this, and yet you still choose kindness, and yet you still choose to be gentle, and you still choose to consider somebody else. That's like, when I see that, that's like really like impressive, and that's kind of what I think about for like, that's in this season of my life. When I think about masculinity or manhood or who I want to be, I'm going to hit the gym. I'm going to be the one starting things. I will initiate. I will do all that stuff, but I also want to be emotionally like someone who can make space for people to be themselves and feel safe.
Yeah. Being focused on the capability part is trying to make a big splash, a big impact, a big, punch. Awareness comes in when it's like not only about how you direct that energy, that impact, like what happens there, but the awareness also comes in the understanding the small things that I do also have a lot of impact. But you lose sight of that if you're not paying attention, if you lack that awareness. Yeah. Like how many times do you hear in stereotypical sort of relationships, it's like someone's like dissatisfied, one side's like dissatisfied about something, the other person's like, don't you see me do this? The other thing is like, you're missing each other. And there's an awareness gap.
Love, respect cycle. Have you heard about that?
For sure. But in all those situations, it's like, not understanding the unintended consequences of your choices and actions, and instead just trying to double down on only my intentions should matter, kind of thing. Like that's another way to put that is lacking awareness.
Yeah.
You just didn't see it. It's okay. But let's not double down on like, I didn't see it, therefore it doesn't matter. You didn't see it, it does matter. Like the tree falls in the forest, like whether it made a sound or not, it fell. It happened. Like, don't tell me that it didn't, because that's just like straight up lying. So don't live a lie. Like very often, like lacking awareness forces you into a life of lies. And so when people are like, men are trash, men are like, it's very often. That is because we put ourselves in a web of like a life of lies, because we refuse. We are either unwilling or unable to really like acknowledge the awareness side of things as being really important. Like I said, responsibility and capability, like part for most people is relatively easy to understand. It's the awareness part I feel like is like that's like the Bruce Lee Zen, like, kind of part,
Higher level thinking.
Yeah. It's And then you put it all together and you realize like, yeah, it transcends gender, but the pathway that it's going to be manifested through in your life is the flavors and styles and types which make sense to you.
Sure.
Because you can't be everything.
Yeah.
There's going to be your flavor. And so, and sometimes we'll call that masculine, sometimes we'll call that feminine. That's just labeling stuff. But these things they're not stuck in these lanes either. Like I said, like you can cook and do things in a way that some people might call more historically been more feminine. And there's like masculine versions of it. But when you look at it, that whole labeling stuff is bullshit. But it suits us in certain ways also. It's not nothing, but also it's like not as much as we tend to make it.
Sure. I do agree. Like in American culture, it does seem like we're conditioned to think that brute forcing things and just saying we're right even when we know we're wrong is the way to go, because that's how we win. But it's often how we all lose in the long run.
America, man. Can I say something more about this? Like the America thing for me, right, is, and I think, assuming that a lot of your listeners, if not most, like Asian Americans, that
hopefully everybody.
Maybe everybody, but like, I'm speaking to like Asian Americans right now. Like what is, because very often for us, it's like, what is our place here? Are we here to make Chinese food and Korean food for people? Are we here to answer people's
robots,
questions about K dramas? Or build robots or like whatever, do tech startups, like whatever. There's so much to say, but like, to make a long story short, this country, the history of this country is that it was built through genocide and slavery. Not that genocide and slavery was part of the history, but that is the history. Like that's how this country was built. And there's this persistent and infectious state of denial that America is in, continues to live out every day by basically, there's this sort of unspoken thing out there that like for, I would say most like white people specifically in America, if they were really honest with you, they would say the genocide and slavery, it was sad, but it had to happen because look at all the nice things that we have today. Look at the life that we have today in America. And I haven't said this word yet, but that's a fucked up point of view. But I would say that's the predominant point of view in America. And in a lot of ways, like that is, if I had to pick one thing, that's the thing that until it gets like fixed, until it gets healed, until it gets solved, like we can't move on. And in a lot of ways, watching things kind of crumble and fall apart right now is because we don't know how to deal with that part, So then how do we deal with it? It's like the only way to deal with it, it's not about just reparations. It's not just about, stuff like that. But it is about like taking stock of what America has been and it is today, that whole story, and thinking to ourselves like, well, imagining, so then where do we go from here? Like, what does the future hold for us? Asian Americans, I feel like in many ways hold a special like role because, when you look at like, there's white people, black people, like Latino people, coming from different history and background. There's also obviously indigenous Americans. But the point is that the Asian Americans, there's a certain way that we got here and we chose to come here. And there's a responsibility that comes with choosing to come here, and when it comes to like, for instance, Asian and black relations and the ways that there's been a lot of like, let's say like, Asian Americans being angry about like Black America and saying like, oh, they want this and that, blah, 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 like what we did, all that sort of like stuff that we sometimes hear. Like, it's really tragic because the way that really should go is Asian Americans come to this country looking around and going, oh, I see what's going on here through the history and through current life. We need to focus on coming together with the Black community. And in many ways, like the yin and the yang of like America is like Asian Americans and Black Americans. To be able to then say like, through this history, and in many ways, like we're like the future in some way, because we're the most recent sort of immigrants, that like, what do we have in common? Because when you look at all these things, non-white people have so much in common in terms of how we view family, in terms of how we view like success and safety. But that is actually a little different than the way white people perceive of these things. And so then it becomes, instead of saying like, we're all marginalized on the outside, it actually should be, they're marginalized in some ways. That point of view is actually, I would dare to say, that point of view is actually less American than our point of view. Because if we're a nation of immigrants, and they forgot that they're immigrants, because they sure don't live like immigrants, then in a lot of ways, like the people who understand that there's a people and places that we come from, and then there's this collective American identity, like that's the heart of what it means to live like an American. But if you forgot what it's like to be European through the formation of white identity 100 years ago, through all these sorts of histories and like social movements and stuff. And instead you have this myth of the white American sort of life, and that like we, do things normally and everyone else is an alien or somehow strange. Like that's backwards. That's backwards. Like the people who are the most American are the people who come with at least two or more cultures together. The collective American sort of culture, because that's a thing. And then the people and places that we come from. And building that up, like that, to me, that's the building blocks of the future of the America, for my kids and for everyone else's kids too. And, is there something what is it that we can do to really bring that about and bring that closer? And that's our challenge.
A more perfect union, right?
Maybe. Yeah. I don't know if it can be perfect, but yeah.
Just to wrap things up and to kind of circle back to the original topic.
Yeah, sorry, I've been meandering all over the place today.
It's all good.
It's all good. It's all good.
Being your Korean dad, I feel like our Korean dad.
I know.
How would you say being a dad, having daughters, changed the way you look at being a man, being a dad, all that? Because you can't be a dad without kids, right? So.
Yeah, I guess so. I think that the biggest thing for me about having kids is understanding that it's a very unique relationship, and the way that I think about it has been it's one where they have all the expectations of me, and I really have no right to have any expectations of them. Expectations is a word I think that is worth kind of really unpacking for people, because the way that I just used it, like I don't have any expectations of my children. That's not my job, and I have no right to that. I have no right. I have no dominion over them. I have responsibility. So my job, in so many ways, it's. There was a time, so I'm divorced from their mom, have been since 2008. And so most of their lives, we were kind of co-parenting, and we're living in different states. And so they would just spend time with me like on holidays and over summer break. And meanwhile, like I'm running these coffee shops and running coffee companies and really mentoring and doing my best to be a good employer, to the folks who I was working with. And there was a day when I got really sad, and I thought kind of like my kids aren't with me like all the time. Like all this energy that I should be, this love and consideration that I should be giving to them, like I'm giving to, other people's kids essentially, through my employees. But then I thought about it some more, and I realized, no, I'm thinking about that wrong. Like in many ways, like I was able to practice being a good dad by being a good employer, leader, manager, because the reason why being a good leader is so hard is that in order to be a good leader, it's like, you have to lead. It's not just about like telling people what to do. That's not leadership. That's just being a boss. That's not the same thing. Mm-hmm. Being a good leader requires understanding of where people are, where they're going now, where they could be going, how to get them to go from that trajectory to the trajectory that they should go, and doing it not by pushing them and not by pulling them, but simply by creating space around them so that they're naturally, through their own capabilities and awarenesses and responsibilities, will start heading in that direction naturally, because that's sort of like that's the trusting the process part, Doing all that is really hard, but that's the job. And that's the job that I took on, being a parent to my kids. And I'm doing my best to be an internet dad in that way, to however many million people on the internet.
Love it.
I feel like if we go any longer, you'll have to adopt us.
I know. Bro, I'll get the papers tomorrow, bro.
With that being said, we'll try and be good Asian sons with a gift.
I know. Oh, yeah. With Tucson. We have a gift for you, Pat.
Okay, I'm gonna.
You're gonna refuse the gift?
No. I'm not gonna refuse the gift, but I'm gonna roast you a little bit right now.
Okay.
Because part of being Asian, very often, is that you have a really big head. And
Keep on getting this.
really
Crazy.
that
I didn't know it was like
even
a thing.
sight unseen. Like my head size like 7 3/4 for my hat.
Too big.
I mean, a lot of these hats end up sort of fitting like. That's not too bad, but it's like I got a really big head.
Oh, really? I mean,
Oh wait, this is not.
yeah,
It's not that
it's not too bad. Yeah. You kind of look like you're directing a movie now.
Yeah.
Dang.
We
Director's
just
share,
mentioned
bro.
that because our first guest, Sung Kang, said the same exact thing.
About big heads.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like uncanny.
I
Like,
think
what?
we'll never live it down at
It's
this point.
it's a family thing. We
Yeah.
talked about it earlier, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Sung's my cousin who I haven't met yet.
That's
all
wild.
these connections.
Yeah.
But we like to end with 3 questions for all of our guests.
Yes, yes. So the 3 questions we have is, where do you consider home?
Home is where my family is.
All the good fathers say.
I know, right?
It's true for me. I've lived a bunch of different places. Where I'm living right now is legitimately considered a rural area outside, like very North County, San Diego.
Oh, okay.
And everyone asks, especially because we were living in LA before, they're like, "How do you like it out there?" I'm like, "Hey, man, you know, it feels great."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you have a spot around there? Do you have a spot around where you're currently living or that is home that you love taking guests to? Maybe a restaurant, cafe, a site to see?
We're asking you to put us on and put our guests on whenever we're down in that part of San Diego.
Oh, we're still looking. We've only been there since July.
Oh, okay. So a recent spot. Okay.
Yeah.
Or what about in Nova? Do you remember any spots that you loved going to? Or when you go back, you love going to visit?
I mean, there's a bunch of food places.
Yeah. Do you have one that you just...
Fuss 75
In Rockville?
I mean, they got Rockville one too. That was like my OG spot, like back in the day when I first
Off Shady Grove.
Columbus discovered pho. You know, there's discovered, there's Columbus discovered, right? Columbus discovered is when you discovered it for you, but people, you know, you didn't discover anything.
Yeah.
1994, Fuss 75. This was before like Koreans got really into it.
Okay, nice.
And so like I for many years I was keeping track of my family tree of all the people I introduced to pho like at that place.
Oh, that's sick.
Who then in turn would go and evangelize to others.
Nice.
Yeah.
Like true Koreans, huh?
Yes.
And the last question we have is, what are you currently listening to? Just on your current rotation. Like what music? Yeah, what kind of music?
So the music that Kimmy and I have been listening to a lot, like of a almost uncategorizable Japanese / Korean group called XG.
Oh,
Yeah, XG's dope.
XG's
Yeah, I know
so
about
good.
XG.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a young of mine who writes songs with them.
Oh yeah, we went to the concert when they were out here in LA. XG, you know, also now they're called NJZ.
Okay.
Yeah.
formerly known as TV.
But lately, what I've been doing, like, I don't listen to music on my own very often, as like in the background, like most people do. Which is funny because I actually like majored in music in college. I was a singer, a vocalist, a bass baritone. All of a sudden, my voice changes. But
Great projection.
but lately, I've kind of moved past listening to podcasts. And now I'll actually play YouTube videos in the car when I'm driving around. Cause
It's kind of nice.
yeah,
I know what you're saying.
yeah, because you don't really have to look at it. It's mostly just like listening to people talk about stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
YouTube in the car is my new thing.
Sick. Maybe I
Yeah.
should get YouTube Premium Plus. What is it?
I don't scroll YouTube and drive, folks. Don't do that. Yeah, but my car is one where I have the button where it'll drive itself on the highway. So then
Nice.
I'll find stuff on YouTube
Nice.
and then
Okay.
yeah. Don't tell California Highway Patrol.
Well, where can people find your stuff if they want to learn more about Nick Cho, about your Korean dad?
either Nick Cho or Your Korean Dad on every platform. I'm just about to launch a new YouTube channel specifically, like together with my 10-year-old stepson, about Pokemon cards.
Oh, y'all pull in booster packs and just see what you pull?
We're trying to do something a little different because the thing is, I'm 51. I'm too old for Pokemon cards.
All right.
And he's like very Gen Alpha. He's doing all the skibbity Sigma stuff, right?
Nice.
And so there's not a lot of content. I haven't seen much content out there that's well produced, that's like intergenerational with an adult and kid. And, with my sensibilities and stuff. And so, yeah, our first video hopefully will drop soon. I'm in the middle of editing it. I'm doing it all myself.
Very cool.
First one's called 15 Ways to Open a Pack of Pokemon Cards.
Okay.
Sounds fun.
Solid.
Yeah. And so, so look out for that. It'll be called YKD and Centa, CENTA. But you can find it on my other social.
Okay. Cool. Look forward to it.
Yeah.
Hey.
Nick Cho, Your Korean Dad, Our Korean Dad.
Our Korean Dad.
Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks, guys. Congratulations again.
Thank you. Appreciate it, man.
Appreciate it.
All right. Peace.